I'm Christina Henriksen,
And I'm Bela Starinchak.
and we are graduate students in the biology department of James Madison University, and we're here to present our research, Cattle Pastures as Carbon Sinks, Evaluating Carbon Storage of Non-Forest Tree Cover Classes in Dry Tropical Silvopastoral Systems. So for some background, land conversion, particularly for agricultural purposes, is a leading cause of ecosystem degradation in the tropics, and this is projected to increase under a growing
It's okay. We'll restart because I realized that we can have a little timer so we can.
Yes. Okay. That sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Restart.
Redo. Okay. Reverse. I'm Christina Henriksen.
And I'm Bela Starinchak.
And we are biology students with James Madison University. And we're here to present our research, Cattle Pastures as Carbon Sinks, Evaluating Carbon Storage of Non-Forest Tree Cover Classes in Dry Tropical Silvopastoral Systems. So for some background, land conversion, particularly for agricultural purposes, is the leading cause of ecosystem degradation in the tropics. And this is projected to increase under a growing global food demand. However, cattle pastures have been seen as an underutilized natural climate solution and have the potential to contribute up to 44.5 petagrams of carbon sequestration if certain agroforest strategies such as silvopasture are increased globally at about a 10% rate. Landowners utilize silvopastoral systems in trees in multiple ways, and this can result in some variation amongst non-forest tree cover classes within the farms, as well as potential variations in carbon storage. However, the variation remains to be quantified. Furthermore, the relationship between total carbon stored within a sustainably managed pasture and woody species regeneration is also unclear. Our research sought to address this with two aims. First, to assess the relationship between tree carbon storage and woody species diversity, and two, to evaluate differences in carbon storage amongst non-forest tree cover classes within the farms. So our methods took place all within the dry tropics in the Los Santos province of Panama, and all of our farms were heavily degraded tropical dry forest ecosystems. We first used some remote analysis in ArcGIS, where we took 15 by 15 meter grids and overlaid them on some base layers that were initially provided by LT, the Environmental Leading and Trading Initiative. We then did some verification with field inventories, where we took 30 meter by 30 meter random plots within each farm of each tree cover class type to maximize area and sample size. We recorded all woody tree species and diameter at breast height if the trees themselves were above 5 centimeters of diameter at breast height. The figures that you see on the bottom are some of the various types of tree cover classes, and Bela here recording the DBH of some of the trees. Bela will talk about our preliminary results.
Yeah, so our study is ongoing, but we do have a few findings to share right now. When we looked at our first aim of the diversity of the woody tree species versus the carbon storage in these different types of tree cover classes, in figure 5, you can see that we found a positive relationship when we ran a simple linear regression, and it was statistically significant at p-value of 0.001 with an r-squared value of 0.32. So this is showing that as you increase your diversity of tree species in your landscape, you're also increasing your carbon storage, which is important for restoration. Then we looked into this a little bit further for our second aim and looked at the proportion of the total area with trees and compared that to the relative total carbon storage in tons of carbon per hectare within the farms and within the tree cover classes within those farms. And basically the biggest takeaway from this figure is that the riparian gallery forests are incredibly important, both in terms of the total area with trees. They're accounting for the majority of the trees in the landscape, and they're also storing by far the most carbon within the farms. But this relationship was not the same for the other tree cover classes. For example, the live fences were the second most common tree cover class that we found, because live fences are very prominent in the landscape and they're just what people use as fences, but they store relatively no carbon. So to look at this discrepancy a little bit further, we ran some stats and found that the riparian gallery forests were significantly higher in terms of carbon storage than the isolated trees and the live fences, but it was not statistically different from the clustered trees or the forestry plantations. And so that's kind of showing that you can maximize carbon storage within these landscapes within certain tree cover classes. So it's really important to have riparian areas as well as groups of trees, whether they're forest tree plantations or just clustered trees, if you're trying to manage from a carbon perspective. And overall, our study is improving the understanding of environmental impacts of the sustainably managed pasture lands. And it's also providing evidence to the contribution of these systems to the restoration of the tropical dry forests. And lastly, it's supporting the consideration of silvopastoral management as a mechanism for climate mitigation in national carbon credit plans. So there's a potential that we're showing for these farmers to receive carbon credit payments for the trees in their landscapes, potentially funding their livelihoods and restoration. Yeah, that's all. We would like to thank LT and Jake and Jorge and Emilio and all of the farmers for letting us come and survey their land. Thank you.